The Young and the Restless Spoilers. Victor Newman, the unrelenting titan of Genoa City, had always been the puppet master behind the scenes, pulling strings, ensuring his family's empire remained untouchable. Yet, there were few threats that truly rattled him. Cain Ashby, though not a member of his bloodline, had become a thorn in Victor's side, an upstart who'd crossed him on more than one occasion. However, it wasn't just Cain's defiance that riled Victor. The truth was far darker. Victor had uncovered a secret about Cain, something so explosive, so damning, that it could destroy him completely. And in Victor's world, once a weakness was exposed, it was only a matter of time before it was used to control. Victor wasted no time in executing his plan. He summoned Cain to his office, a place where every corner seemed to echo with the heavy weight of history. Cain entered with trepidation, knowing full well that the patriarch's summons were never without consequence. Victor's cold eyes fixed on him, a predatory gleam in his gaze. "You've done well, Cain," Victor began, his voice smooth, calculated, "but you've become a liability. And now, you must prove your loyalty." Cain's chest tightened. His respect for Victor had always been rooted in the man's power, but this was different. This wasn't about business. This was personal. Victor's words came next, chilling in their simplicity. "You will destroy Jack Abbott. I've given you the weapon, and I expect you to use it. You know what I have on him. You're the only one who can take him down now." Cain froze, the weight of the task sinking in. Jack Abbott, a man he had always admired, was the target. Cain's mind raced. He had always looked up to Jack, not only for his business acumen but for his decency, something that set him apart in the cutthroat world they inhabited. Jack had mentored him at times, treated him as an equal. The very thought of betraying him felt like an unbearable burden. But Victor's command brooked no argument. Cain was caught between the man who had become a father figure and the man who had the power to destroy everything he had built. The room felt smaller now. The air was thick with the tension of an impossible choice. Cain had to decide, follow the ruthless path laid out by Victor, or take a stand and face the consequences. Either way, he knew one thing for sure, this would change everything. Meanwhile, Jack Abbott was sinking deeper into his web of enemies. For years, Jack had been a man of strength, a pillar of the Abbott family, but now he found himself surrounded by forces that were closing in on him from all sides. His enemies, those who had once been allies, were multiplying. He felt like a lion backed into a corner, with no escape in sight. The constant threat to his company, the relentless attacks on his reputation, had left him exhausted. He couldn't shake the feeling that his enemies were closer than ever before. It wasn't just business anymore, it was personal. The threats had escalated to a point where Jack had no idea who to trust. Friends had turned into foes, and foes into unseen predators. He'd tried to keep the pressure at bay, but it was becoming impossible to breathe. His nerves were fraying, his strength waning. But what hurt the most was the realization that someone close to him, someone he had once trusted, might be part of the scheme to take him down. Cain. Jack had known the younger man for years, respected him, even helped him climb the corporate ladder. The thought of Cain being involved in his downfall was unbearable. It was a betrayal of the highest order. He couldn't fathom it, but deep down, the signs were there. Victor had maneuvered well, knowing that Jack's enemies were too numerous, too ambitious. But what Victor didn't account for was the love and loyalty Jack had cultivated over the years. Despite the mounting pressure, Jack would not back down. His respect for those who had earned it, especially Cain, was unwavering. And though he was tired, though he felt the sting of every betrayal, Jack would fight to protect what was his. He wasn't about to let anyone, least of all Victor Newman, take him down without a fight. As for Nikki Newman, she had always walked the line between Victor's storm of ambition and the life she had built with him. But as she overheard the conversation between Victor and Cain, her heart sank. The plan, the manipulation, it was all too much. She could feel the weight of the impending disaster. She knew that Jack, a man who had always been there for her, would be caught in the crossfire of Victor's insatiable hunger for control. This wasn't just business anymore. This was Victor's ego playing out with reckless abandon, and the stakes were higher than ever. Nikki's mind raced. She couldn't let this happen. She had to warn Jack, had to give him a chance. But would he listen? Would he even believe her? And would it matter in the end? Her instincts screamed at her to act, to save the man who had stood by her through thick and thin, but she knew that telling Jack could be a death sentence in itself. It could send him into a downward spiral, a panic that would only play into Victor's hands. But Nikki wasn't one to stand idly by when someone she cared about was in danger. She had to do something, even if it meant breaking from Victor for the first time in years. Nikki met Jack in secret, her face pale, her words urgent. Victor knows everything about you, Jack. He has Kane in his grip, and he's planning to destroy you. You need to be careful. Victor wants Kane to take you down, don't trust anyone right now. Jack's face was a mask of determination, but Nikki could see the fear creeping in. The cracks were forming. Victor's always had his sights set on me, Jack said, his voice thick with defiance. But I won't let him win. Kane may have a secret, but I won't back down. If they want a fight, they'll get one. Jack had always prided himself on his ability to handle adversity, but this time was different. This wasn't just about business. This was personal. Victor was playing a dangerous game, and Jack wasn't sure if he had the strength left to win. As the stakes continued to rise, Jack knew one thing for certain: he was no longer fighting just for control of the family business. This battle would define his legacy. He would have to confront those who would betray him, those who had once been allies and now sought to destroy everything he had worked for. But in this world, there were no guarantees. No one could be trusted. And Jack was about to face the ultimate test of loyalty, betrayal, and survival. With the threat of Victor looming over him, Jack stood ready to face his enemies head-on. He wasn't just fighting for his family's legacy, he was fighting for his life. The choice was unbearable, a cruel twist of fate for Kane Ashby, a man trapped between his loyalty and his survival. Victor's demand weighed heavily on him like an iron shackle, binding him to a destiny that seemed impossible to escape. Kane had always believed that power was something to be earned, something to be used for good. He had worked hard to build his life, his business, and his relationships. But now, with the truth about Victor's threats and the dark secret he held over Kane, that world had been shattered. Victor's ultimatum was simple yet brutal: destroy Jack Abbott or lose everything. Kane was no stranger to pressure, but this was different. This wasn't just a business deal gone wrong or a betrayal in the corporate world. This was personal, a direct attack on the very principles that had always guided him. Jack Abbott, his mentor, his friend, the man who had shown him what it meant to be both ruthless and honorable in a world full of chaos, was now the target. Kane's heart ached at the thought of betraying Jack. The idea of doing something so vile, so destructive, made him feel sick. But the alternative was worse: Victor would destroy him, his family, his future. He would never know peace again. Kane had always admired Jack. Even now, as the weight of Victor's threat pressed down on him, he couldn't help but remember the countless times Jack had helped him, supported him through thick and thin. Jack had given Kane a chance when others had written him off. He had guided him through some of the toughest challenges in the business world. The respect was mutual. Kane had wanted to succeed, but never at the cost of turning his back on those who had helped him. Now, it seemed that Victor's game was about to strip all of that away. But there was no other choice. Kane's body felt numb, his mind swirling in chaos. He was a man cornered by circumstance. The life he had built was being torn apart, and Victor was the storm destroying everything in its path. Kane's soul screamed in protest, but the cold reality of his situation kept him anchored. If he didn't comply with Victor, he would lose it all. He would lose his family, his reputation, and perhaps even his freedom. The consequences of defying Victor were unthinkable. And so, Kane found himself standing at the edge of a precipice. Could he really do it? Could he betray Jack to save himself, or was there another way out of this nightmare? The answer felt like a tight knot in his chest. He didn't know. The lines between right and wrong had blurred, and in the face of Victor's power, even his conscience felt irrelevant. Meanwhile, Nikki Newman was walking a tightrope of her own. For years, she had stood by Victor's side, trying to make sense of his ruthless ambitions and his overwhelming need for control. But the cracks were starting to show in their marriage. The burden of keeping his secrets, the weight of his constant scheming, had become too much to bear. Nikki had never been the type of woman to sit idly by while others suffered, but with Victor, she had always made exceptions. Now, those exceptions were starting to eat at her. She could feel herself unraveling. When she overheard Victor's conversation with Kane, a chill ran through her. The man she had married, who had once been her partner, her confidant, was slipping further into the darkness. The idea of Victor manipulating Kane, of turning him into a weapon against Jack, left a bitter taste in her mouth. She had been loyal, but there was only so much loyalty one person could give before it turned into something else, complicity. Nikki couldn't stand it anymore. The battles between her and Victor had escalated to a point where she couldn't even look at him the same way. His control over her, over their lives, had been absolute, but the realization that he would sacrifice anyone, especially those closest to him, to maintain that power, was too much to bear. Kane was trapped. Jack was in danger. And Nikki had a choice to make. No more. She would not sit idly by as her husband played his games. She would warn Jack, even if it meant facing the wrath of Victor. But what good would it do? Could Jack even fight back against someone as dangerous as Victor? Would he trust her after everything that had happened? Jack Abbott, for all his bravado and strength, was a man at his breaking point. He had faced countless enemies in his life, Victor, his own family, business rivals, but the attack that was coming now felt different. It wasn't just about business anymore. This was about survival. Kane, the man he had once mentored, now seemed to be at the heart of Victor's plan to destroy him. How could it be? Jack had given Kane everything: advice, support, friendship. He had trusted him with the most valuable parts of his life, his business. The thought that Kane might betray him, that Victor might have found a way to turn him against Jack, was a punch to the gut. But Jack knew one thing for certain: he wasn't going down without a fight. He had survived worse. He had survived battles with his own family, betrayal from those he trusted, and the relentless onslaught of Victor's schemes. But this time, the stakes were higher. Victor had crossed a line, and Jack knew he couldn't let him win. If Kane was involved in this plot, Jack would have to find a way to expose the truth, and fast. As Kane sat alone in his office, the weight of Victor's demands pressing down on him, he could feel the walls closing in. There was no way out. The choice had been made for him. But there was still one question that haunted him: would he have the strength to betray Victor and turn against the man who had brought him to the edge? Victor was right. He had the power to destroy Kane. But Kane wasn't going down without a fight either. The very same strength that Victor had used to manipulate him might just be the very thing Kane could use to turn the tables. Could Kane and Jack join forces, take down Victor together, and reclaim what was rightfully theirs? Would they make the ultimate stand, not just for business, but for their lives? The road ahead was unclear, the danger ever present. But one thing was certain: Victor had underestimated the power of loyalty and revenge combined. And Jack Abbott? He wasn't about to let anyone, including Kane, destroy everything he had worked for. The battle for control was only just beginning.